On this episode of Blue Zoo TV presented by Hikari, we're back at Inland Aquatics to take an up-close and personal look at corals.
Everyone knows marine fish hate pellets, right? Not when they're fed Hikari Marine S or Marine A, the world's first sponge-like marine pellets. Chock full of natural ingredients your marine fish need and love, these rapidly softening, sinking pellets provide them a taste and texture your fish will instinctually adore. Ingredients like fatty acids, DHA, and EPA round out a nutritional package that's hard to beat. If you want your fish looking like they just came off the reef, feed them Hikari Marine S or Marine A.
Morgan, we've already seen the equipment. Now we're going to talk about coral. I can't think of a better tank to show off than this one. Explain it a little bit.
Well, there's a variety of soft and hard corals in here, a lot of which we propagate for the coral trade, and some of which we don't. Also some marine algae. We raise a lot of marine algae here that maybe a lot of places don't raise. It's not a very good example colony, but this Ochotes algae is a big seller for us. We also have things like the hammer corals, the actinodiscus mushrooms, various monoporas, like the classic monopora capricornus, as well as some soft corals. This is the original ORA yellow-tip sarcophyton. We still actually sell some of the Anthilia, which is a fairly common clove polyp in the back, zoanthus of various colors, Clustria fricata, the trumpet coral. Colt coral we don't really cut that much anymore, but we do still offer it, the really nice green Palithoa zoanthus. And of course there's some other varieties like the purple capricornus, which is a little bit affected by the blenny in this particular tank. And that's a good representation of the overall picture of some of the stuff that we propagate, although we also do a lot greater diversity of macroalgae.
Explain a little bit what the difference is between a hard coral and a soft coral for people that don't know.
Well, it's pretty simple really. The soft coral doesn't lay down a calcium carbonate skeleton. So like this Colt coral, it's just a big gooey mass. If I were to inject it and kill it, there'd be absolutely nothing left when we came in here tomorrow. The Ancora, this Euphilia on the other hand, see, I can feel, but you can't quite yet see. I'll actually invert it. You can see that as it grows, it's actually laying down a calcium carbonate skeleton that it uses as a skeleton. And these, once thought to be very difficult SPS corals like the monoporas, it's much easier to see on those. It seems that almost everything on it is a hard structure. You have to look really closely to even see any evidence of the fleshy polyp that emerges from that stony structure.
Is one type rarer than the other?
In tanks, certainly. When we talk about in tanks, and I guess technically in the ocean as well, but I can only really speak to in aquaria. Some of these corals are quite common, been around for a long time. You get into something like Duncanopsamia, it's only been prevalent in tanks for a few years. I think Dustin of ORA was kind enough to send us the few polyps that grew into this, our mother colony that's then been propagated out to hundreds of other colonies. People always think that coral is slow growing, and that certainly can be true for something like a brain coral, or we look at the Heliofungia down here, a long tentacled plate coral, pretty slow growing. Certainly relative to something like an SPS coral that can grow very quickly. Even the reason that these Euphilia varieties are all in this tank is that they're ones that we found that even within the family of Euphilia, or for a given species of hammer coral, these varieties grow much faster, so they're much more practical for us to manipulate than a sister colony, something of the same species that just for whatever reason doesn't grow as fast as this one does.
So with 40,000 gallons under one roof, I would imagine that we have some unique corals. You got a little bit of time to show us around?
I do.
Cordon's Novaqua Plus detoxifies chlorine and toxic metals while adding a protective skin slime coating, echinacea, and natural electrolytes and vitamins. Cordon's superior water conditioning products help make fish keeping easy. Visit Cordon.com and check out the entire line of products and ask for Cordon products at your favorite store. Cordon, trusted solutions since 1961.
Morgan, the concept here is to find the coolest stuff, and with 40,000 gallons, there's a lot of cool stuff. Here you have, it almost looks like best of show for anemones. Give us a little explanation of some of them.
We have a lot of anemones here. We've collected and manipulated, even propagated some anemones over the years. There's some really cool bubbles, or the, typically sold as the bubble anemone. The bubble anemone on the back wall, that orange tip bubble anemone, is much more typical of what you see in reef tanks. For whatever reason, they don't seem to want to bubble out or get the bulbs in captivity as much as they do in the wild. In the wild, they typically are bulbed out like this. This one's kind of in an intermediate state. You see the rows there. It's got a few bulbs, but it's also got a few elongate tentacles like this guy up here.
A lot of times you hear stories about fish growing to the size of the tank that it's in. And marine life is a lot different. Will these anemones grow to the size that the tank they're in, or will they overgrow the size of the tank?
I don't know that I've ever seen one overgrow the size of the tank. And again, it has a lot to do with how much you're feeding them. The anemone itself is basically a bag of water. It'll expel water and become very small, and can very quickly absorb water and become big. There's some physical constraint on that, and you make an anemone larger by feeding it. And I don't think you could actually feed one to the point that it's going to, overgrow the tank. But back to your question in regard to an anemone getting too big, it wouldn't take long before it would grow to the point that some part of it would get affected by the uptake or the inlet of the water movement of the tank.
Well, we haven't even gotten into the warehouse yet. You mentioned the warehouse. I think we should go back there and see what kind of gems we can find.
Let's check it out.
Fish love frozen foods that are full of the nutrition they need and not freeze or burn. Hikari BioPure offers the world's only frozen foods that are gut-loaded with bio-encapsulated multivitamins and packaged for maximum freshness. Our no-touch, mess-free cube packs offer portions that are easy to adjust and keeps the food completely airtight and in optimum condition. Gone are the days of having to rinse the food before feeding, because Hikari BioPure is packed in pure, fresh water, making it the world's cleanest frozen food.
Morgan, in this section of your warehouse, it looks like you have little corals, some big corals. I would take it that this is probably where your propagation starts.
This is where a lot of the small grow-out corals are maintained. And so you see a lot of corals that have just been cut or were cut recently, haven't yet grown out over their bases, whether they be large polyp stonies like over here or small polyp stonies like are predominantly over there. This is where we let them get the foothold and make sure that they're stable enough to get moved elsewhere.
So basically we've seen the start and growth of a coral here.
Yeah.
And you've shown us some of the display tanks. You've shown us some of the unique coral that you have. And it's all one big family when it comes to starting and stopping from something, right?
Yeah, we've pretty much got a little bit of everything.
Morgan, this place is fantastic. I appreciate you having us in. I was thinking, since I know so much now about corals and fish, you think you don't mind if I stay for a while? Like a couple weeks in this tropical paradise? Or at least come visit you in January?
Hey, yeah, it's really nice here in January. It's pretty much 80 degrees all the time.
It's a great place. Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for being here.
To learn more about Hikari's great food selections for your aquariums, go to hikariusa.com. To learn more about the show or to email us, go to bluezootv.com.